Dwayne Wade joining Kyrie and AD on the Mavericks, Tim Duncan donning the purple and gold with LeBron and Luka, and even Michael Jordan playing for the Warriors to team up with Stephen Curry, along with every single team in the NBA adding a random all-time great legend to the ranks of their roster. All thanks to this wheel spin of the greatest NBA players of all time, deciding which historic stars will be joining a modern-day 2025 NBA roster. And the league was instantly shaking up, with some teams completely flipping the script overnight, like the San Antonio Spurs, who added Dirk Nowitzki as their go-to scoring option, and it paid off big in clutch moments.
For Dirk, 5 seconds, Dirk for 3, yes sir! They lead! 2.9 to go!
Dirk was giving the Spurs the exact scoring punch they needed, with over 24 points a night, and pairing that with a De'Aaron Fox and Wemby pick and roll to further round out the team, it was no surprise that this group would be near the top of the West. But what may actually surprise you is the fall of the Thunder in this reality, who added Chris Mullin, a very good scorer and shooter during his own era, but would apparently disrupt OKC's chemistry as they fall out of playoff contention, which wouldn't be the only West juggernaut to experience a major drop in the standings, with the Grizzlies adding an elite defender Scottie Pippen, who you'd frankly think would fit right in with their gritty style of play, yet somehow they would plummet all the way down to the 13th seed, putting them in company with the Vince Carter Clippers, who were only able to win 36 games on the season. And even though the Rockets got a familiar face added, bolstering their front court with the two-way phenom Hakeem Olajuwon, they would drop just like Memphis and the Clippers, which just goes to show that if teams this talented were dropping this far in the standings, the rest of the West would have some interesting storylines. Like the Denver Nuggets, pairing Jokic with another superstar, Allen Iverson, an elite scorer capable of running the offense. The Phoenix Suns, who added Kevin Garnett, a monstrous two-way tandem providing some toughness to the team. Or the New Orleans Pelicans, with their addition of Magic Johnson, finally giving the team a true facilitator to hopefully unleash Zion. But that will all be coming soon enough, because first, we're going to talk about the surprises in the East. Like the Boston Celtics, who were having difficulty incorporating their star into the lineup, because with as much talent as they already had on the team, it would be a challenge to find minutes for Tony Parker in the rotation, and the defending champions' chemistry would take a hit, leading the Boston falling to the 6th seed. And the other interesting storyline for the East was the Brooklyn Nets, with Jerry West going from a bottom-feeding team to one of the best in the East, with the logo averaging over 28 points a night, carrying a young Brooklyn team without any help, and landing the 4th seed in a strong conference, which was actually a 3-way tie with the 3rd seeded Cavaliers, who added Manu Ginobili to their roster, winning 6th Man of the Year and powering their bench, and then also the 5th seeded Toronto Raptors, with Dominique Wilkins creating a 3-headed monster with Barnes and Ingram, and the media had high hopes of what they could accomplish this year. And soon enough in the playoffs, we'll have a chance to see just how well Toronto and everyone else performs, but for now, we gotta finish talking the regular season. Other than that, the rest of the East would be relatively similar to how we know it in real life, despite some of these teams having very impressive players added to their groups, like Shaq heading to the Hornets to team up with the exciting guard LaMelo Ball. The bottom teams would still be some of the worst in this reality. Some of these teams at the bottom East, didn't matter who you gave them, they were going to be losing teams. A little surprised with the Bucks, though, that they weren't better. And even the Sixers, adding Sean Kemp with a healthy Embiid because there's no injuries in his sim, a little bit surprised about those. On the flip side, the top of the conference was still holding up as contenders, starting with the Knicks, who added James Worthy into their lineup, a very solid two-way player that the Knicks were able to incorporate into their system seamlessly, eventually leading to the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference, only being one up by the Atlanta Hawks, of course led by Trae Young, but his new running mate may surprise you, because it would actually be Dennis Rodman, who was leading the league in rebounds per game, which was a major help for the Hawks on missed opportunities, and his defense anchored his unit and rode to the 1st seed. But there was still one team even scarier, and it wasn't because of their on-court play, but the local school system was terrified of the pairing. Luckily though, even with as talented as Malone was on the court, the Bulls still weren't able to push into the playoffs, so with the season ending early, the local youth can safely enjoy their summer as we wrap up our Eastern Conference review. But where the real stories were was the top half of the Western Conference. with teams like the Dwayne Wade Mavericks, whose scoring and athleticism opened up the doors for the top-rated offense in the league, alongside Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, as Dwayne led his group in not only points per night, but also assists per game, all on very high efficiency, landing Dallas the 3rd seed in their conference. But even more impressive were the Wolves, who added an absolute bona fide scorer to their ranks with Paul Pierce, who may have never been looked at as a generational talent in comparison to some of the other legends here, but he was still undoubtedly one of the best players to ever touch a basketball, helping push Minnesota to the best record in the entire league. But from here is actually where the rest gets very interesting. Starting off with Michael Jordan's Warriors, who needless to say would benefit greatly from having Steph's spacing, open up the court for one of the greatest scorers ever, which unsurprisingly landed him atop the NBA for points per game, even while sharing the opportunities with other stars like Steph and Butler. But that didn't exactly mean this team was perfect, cause somehow they'd still drop all the way to the 8th seed, but they could easily be a dark horse come the playoffs, and they still had confidence.
We obviously a well-tested team and understand the runs that can happen, the energy in this building.
Which wouldn't be easy though, because with the 4 through 7 seeds all closely sitting amongst each other in the standings, it was anyone's ring to win, but 3 stood out more than the others. Each headlined by players at the top of the MVP race, all helping their teams in different ways, but each doing a bit of everything on the court. It would be the topic of discussion all year long, and you really could make an argument of any 3 of them winning the award, but at the end of the day, it could only be one.
Thank you for showing us what it takes to be the NBA's most valuable player.
Nikola Jokic.
But now as we head into the playoffs, starting in Phoenix, Kevin Garnett would have a chance for revenge, matched up against the Denver Nuggets in round 1. And with the series kicking off in front of his home fan support, KG was taking over the game here, looking to attack Denver in the paint and abuse their lack of interior defense, singling out Nikola to expose him on this end of the floor, and in doing so would take the first strike. However, just as quickly in retaliation, Jokic was reminding Garnett exactly why he did get the MVP, and despite Kevin being one of the best defenders of all time, the Joker was still humiliating him regularly in Game 2. Whether it was in the post or off the dribble around the perimeter, it would get ugly quick with the series tying back up. The first 2 games were really close. This series is shaping up to be incredibly exciting. And to say I was right would be an understatement, because it wasn't only Jokic and KG battling it out one-on-one, but we also had a scoring competition between some all-time elite players, like Kevin Durant finding opportunities for a basket nearly every trip down, only for Allen Iverson to come down to the other end and find a way to match those points. And with a similar scoring exhibition happening between the talented Booker and Denver's Jamal Murray, this series would be primed to go the distance, knotting it all up for a final game.
It's Game 7, Round 1 of the NBA playoffs. The Phoenix Suns have endured 6 long games. It is now the last stand. There is no looking back, as they must lay it all on the line against the Denver Nuggets.
And this season-deciding game would shift our attention back to the 2 MVP candidates, yet again clashing it out the same way they have the entirety of the series, yet at the end of the day, only one of these stars can advance.
And they do it. They'll move on to round 2.
And it would be the Phoenix Suns outlasting Denver in an epic duel, and the entire team was confident.
We came out and played hard. Guys played together. And this was all I expected, man. I'm glad that, we was able to get the win tonight. We're looking forward to the next game.
As for the rest of the first round in the playoffs, none of the other series were really close, with most teams clearly showing who had the better roster and handling business easily to advance. Even teams like the Pistons, who added Charles Barkley to their group and looked like they could possibly have an upset in round 1, would eventually fall to the Knicks, who simply had the better team overall and would outlast Detroit after 6 games. And it would be the same story out in Toronto, with the previously alluded to Wilkins Raptors looking to prove themselves in the postseason, going on to win the round as the lower seeded team. which would be the only lower seeded team left to do so, with the Spurs making quick work of Kobe's Sacramento Kings ball dominant overload disaster, and Anthony Edwards up against a player that so many fans have mentioned comparisons of, would put on a show in the biggest matchup of his career, steadily coasting forward, looking to make a deep run, starting with this win. And lastly, ironically enough, we had the Mavericks and Lakers clashing head to head shortly after making the AD and Luka swap, but with Davis doing a solid job defensively and offensively against Tim Duncan in this series, it would open up the door for a young prime Dwayne Wade to shine bright in the playoffs, as we know he does, averaging some of the best numbers in all of round one, eventually helping his team defeat LA. But Dallas wasn't stopping there, as they head into the second round up against the San Antonio Spurs, where Anthony Davis was shutting down the amazing scoring run we've seen from Dirk. And on the other end, the Spurs didn't have any defenders capable of lessening the blow from D-Wade and Kyrie, eventually leading to a sweep of the Spurs, which would be a trend here in round two. Because we'd also see a sweep out east, with the Raptors yet again stunning the world as they upset a higher seed, this time being the first seeded Hawks, ironically led by Hawks legend Dominique Wilkins, who was completely unstoppable in this series, slightly outclassing Trae Young, who also averaged over 30 a night, eventually sneaking to the conference finals without many issues. And then back in the West, we'd see the Suns' round one heroics become completely obsolete, as the Timberwolves come into town in round two and totally knock them off their feet, in full control from the first tip-off to the final buzzer of the series, ending things in a sweep here. But as we now shift our focus to the Knicks and Celtics matchup, this one at the very least wouldn't be a sweep, with the Knicks firmly up 3-1, although for the defending champs Celtics, they didn't think their backs were against the wall, because after a long, hard-fought battle from both sides in game two, in the end everything was tied up late and Boston had the ball.
Tatum's got to go in a hurry. He pulls up. Yes!
And with that huge shot, Tatum wasn't only keeping the season alive, but giving Boston all the momentum. Going out into game 6, still taking things one game at a time, now back on their home floor for boosted confidence, and it was helping them pick up where they left off last match, hanging on yet again, forcing a final game 7. Except this last game wasn't exactly like the few we just witnessed. It wasn't going to be the Celtics maintaining momentum, and it wasn't even going to be the Knicks in full control. Instead, we were going to see a back and forth affair with no sign of who will come out on top, leading us to a climactic finish with only moments left. We have a tightly contested game 7 for a trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. Knicks versus the Celtics. Jaylen Brown with it, James Worthy guarding him, coming off the screen. The pull-up Jay for the leading is fouled, and the basket. 4-point play for Jaylen Brown. Remarkable. As he sinks that free throw, he gives Boston a 2-point lead. I don't know that we've ever seen a 4-point play to jump in on this channel. Jalen Brunson with it now. Tony Parker stuns him with the move. Tony Parker recovers. Brunson tries to force it. No foul, a lot of contact. Hart gets the board, swinging around Mikal Bridges now. Cat setting the screen on Derek White. Bridges nowhere to go. The Boston defense is too much. Brunson was open, they didn't find him. Bridges swatted away by Porzingis. Brunson the pull up. It's off. Cat the board. Cat goes up. It's off. Porzingis is clamping down the paint. Boston on the break now. 60 seconds to get to Tatum. Tatum down to Derek White. Derek White to Parker. Parker to Brown. The pump delay. His lay is no good. Worthy the board. Oh my goodness. New York with the ball on the other end now. Bridges against Derek White. Cat tried to sneak the screen, didn't choose to use it. They're going to Brunson again on Parker, nowhere to go. The spin move, what is happening down here? Brunson gets him jumping. This is the worst play I've ever seen. Bridges, Derek White, he's gonna have to pull the trigger. It's off, wow. The Celtics now, New York desperately needs a stopper. This one may simply be over. Jaylen Brown, his drive is off. Cat the board, they're not gonna use the timeout. They're just playing through, there is no timeouts. This is all on the line right here. Josh Hart driving it in. His leg gives him the lead. This entire series may very well boil down to this final possession right here with Boston having the ball. Jaylen Brown with it. James Worthy sticking him. Brown trying to get open. Did it earlier. Can he do it again? Jaylen Brown drives it in. A really tough play. Taps it up. Taps it up and in. Unbelievable. New York, no timeouts. From half court for the win. It's up. The Celtics advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. They made the 3-1 comeback. And they didn't know it yet, but the win here was about to earn them a trip straight to the finals. Because the following matchup against the Toronto Raptors was yet again continuing the story of this year's playoffs, with most series having one team stand out as far ahead. And even with Wilkins playing his best basketball of his life, it still was not going to be enough. The Celtics were sweeping the Raptors to earn themselves a trip to the NBA Finals. And their opponent was being decided just as quickly as it was in the East. We'd see one single team playing at the higher level, with Anthony Edwards and Paul Pierce leading the charge for Minnesota, eventually earning them their first ever trip to the NBA Finals, and we were in for a treat. Minnesota versus Boston should be a good matchup. Paul Pierce against his team from IRL, Boston Celtics legend. Get your predictions in down below right now. Who do you think is about to win this final? Speaking of Paul Pierce, very early on in this series, he was shining the brightest, putting up some astounding numbers and looking to be the better player in the matchup between himself and Jason Tatum. And when you pair that with Ant himself averaging a 30-piece, giving Jaylen Brown nightmares to kick off the series, it would lead to a dominant 2-0 lead for Minnie early. But just when you thought the pattern of sweeps was about to continue, Boston was flurrying back to keep this series competitive. Playing in their home turf again, they would use it to their advantage, as we've seen in past series, and with all of their stars locked in, this would be all knotted back up before we know it. Leading to now, the biggest game of the year, a Game 5 with either side able to take momentum. And even though Tatum would come out with his best personal game of the entire series, it would all be for nothing, as Paul Pierce was one-upping him for an even better game, leading Minnesota to what would be a blowout win to take the lead. And while I wish I could say Boston fought back hard in Game 6 to force a Game 7, that may not exactly be the case. Because while they did in fact play well in an effort to extend the series, it may have been too little too late, because as Game 6 is within minutes of ending, the Wolves found themselves with a large lead, unless Boston can claw back. The Celtics find themselves down by 4 right now against the Minnesota Timberwolves, trailing in the series. It's do or die time right now. Jaylen Brown in the paint. He gets Paul Pierce jumping. Great play by Brown. Minnesota on the other end now. Julius Randle with it against Jason Tatum. Julius Randle driving in his lay. It's off the board. The putback is good. Extends the lead right back up to 4. Boston now on the other end. Jaylen Brown with it again. Paul Pierce still sticking him. Boston Celtics legend Pierce playing against his former team. Jaylen Brown coming around the screen from Tatum. Brown one-on-one again. Nowhere to go. He gets involved with Julius Randle all day, wide open at the top, but it rims out. Minnesota has a chance to take a huge lead here. Julius Randle with the ball again. It finally gets in the hands of Ant. Ant driving it in. And Jaylen Brown to strip. Jaylen Brown pushing the pace on the break. Anthony Edwards slowing him down. Brown, a wide open Tatum for 3. Got it! 1-point game. The Wolves now on the other end, back against the wall. Now they had a big lead and lost it. And drives it. Derek White sends it packing. Wolves ball. The Celtics are coming up clutch. Big baskets, big stops. Julius Randle in the corner. Ant again, Derek White on him. And a little separation to pull up. Jay extends it to a 3-point lead. The Celtics now only trailing by 3, have an opportunity. They took a timeout, won their last 2 to draw something up here, get a good look. Try to claw back into this game. Jason Tatum off the inbound. They finally Jaylen Brown open. Oh, he rims out. That would have been huge. Anthony Edwards. Boston desperately needs a stop here. Edwards blows by White. It's a jam and 1 over Jason Tatum. That might be the dagger. Edwards free throw now to take a 6-point lead. He misses that though. KP with the board. 40 seconds left in the game. You don't have time to waste. Jaylen Brown, you must score here if you want to extend the season. Brown driving it in. Tough, nowhere to go. Over Ant. It's off his own board. He tries again. It's off again. Edwards gets it. This might be over. Edwards hits both free throws, down by 7 now. Boston has to score, I would imagine, a quick 3 here if they're going to have any chance. Jason Tatum in the corner, the pump. He pulls it over Randle. It's off. That's going to do it. They're not even going to foul. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the NBA champions. So there you have it. The Minnesota Timberwolves adding Paul Pierce was enough to push them over the hump of everyone else to become NBA champions. And Pierce will be receiving a very well-earned Finals MVP here. But what if we took every team's best player ever and put them on the modern roster? Who would win then? Find out by clicking this video next.